We all know healthy plants need healthy soil, right? Sounds simple enough.
It does.
But what is it about healthy soil that really makes the difference?
Yeah.
Today, we're digging into something fundamental, something that seems basic, but honestly holds the key to why some land thrives and other land.
Well, it doesn't. Think of this as your shortcut to getting a core principle of productive land.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, we're zeroing in on organic matter in the soil.
Yeah.
You might also hear it called humus, which is that really stable, decomposed part.
Right, humus.
And our info for this deep dive comes from some notes Kesser and Steen put together for a university assignment, Natur Innovation. It's based on material from their professor, Mr. Hendriks.
Okay.
And what's good here is it's really practical stuff. We're skipping the, complicated charts and graphs and getting straight to what matters for understanding it.
Perfect. So our mission today, let's be clear, is to figure out why organic matter is just so incredibly important for good soil.
By the time we're done, you'll really get how it affects things like holding water, the soil structure, whether nutrients are available, basically the soil's overall health.
Everything.
Okay, let's dive in. What's the sort of fundamental role here? Why is organic matter such a big deal?
Well, fundamentally, it's crucial for how well soil works at all. One huge role is water retention. Think of organic matter like adding a sponge to your soil.
A sponge, okay.
It holds on to a lot of water, which plants can then tap into when things get dry. That's obviously critical.
Yeah, especially with changing weather patterns.
Right, and the numbers are pretty impressive.
Yeah.
For every 1% increase in organic matter, soil can hold something like an extra 20,000 gallons of water per acre.
Wow, 20,000 gallons. That's massive. So less watering, but also resilience against drought.
Definitely. It's a buffer, but it's not just about water.
Right, I figured. What else?
It massively improves soil aeration and structure. It helps stick the tiny soil particles together into these little clumps. Aggregates, they're called?
Aggregates, got it.
And that creates spaces, pores, These pores let air and water move through easily. Plus, it just makes it physically easier for roots to grow down and find what they need.
So it gives the roots room to breathe, basically, and explore.
Exactly, like pathways.
And I think I remember reading it affects pH levels, too. Is that right?
Yep. Another key thing, organic matter acts as a buffer. It helps keep the soil pH stable.
How does it do that?
It can sort of soak up extra acidity or alkalinity, keeping things in that sweet spot range that most plants really like, which is important because pH controls how well plants can actually absorb the nutrients that are there.
Okay, so it's like a chemical regulator, too, keeping
Got it.
things balanced. But the notes also mentioned something about biological activity. This part sounds really fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets really dynamic. Organic matter is essentially the food for this huge community of microorganisms in the soil.
All the bacteria and fungi and stuff.
Exactly. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, tiny little soil animals. Count as things. They break down the organic matter. And that whole process creates this living ecosystem. Plants, microbes, soil critters, all interacting.
Okay.
And this increased activity, it leads to healthier soil that's more resilient, that can fight off diseases and pests better. It's like the soil has its own immune system boosted by the microbes.
Like a natural defense network underground. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So more organic matter is like fueling this whole support system.
You got it. It creates this positive feedback loop. More life, more fertility, more biodiversity underground.
Fantastic. Okay, so we know why it's important, but let's get specific. What is this organic matter exactly? Where does it come from?
Good question. So it's basically the leftovers of life, isn't it?
Yeah, the note said things like dead plants, dead microbes.
Precisely. Fallen leaves, bits of old roots, the bodies of bacteria and fungi after they die, and all the stuff they produce as they decompose things.
Right.
And the formation. It's this slow, continuous cycle. When this stuff is in the soil, it becomes dinner for all those other soil organisms we just talked about. They get to work breaking down those complex bits.
And it's not like it disappears overnight, right? Some of it sticks around.
That's key. Over time, some of the material gets transformed into these really stable compounds, humus, as we mentioned, and that stuff can last for decades, maybe even centuries. It's crucial for long-term soil health.
Decades. Okay. And there was a statistic in the notes that really jumped out at me about the impact of increasing it.
Yes, the jump from 4-5% to 8%. It sounds like maybe not a huge leak numerically, but the effect is significant.
Yeah, what happens?
You see dramatic improvements in holding on to water, holding on to nutrients, that soil structure, the clumping we talked about gets much better, and you get a real surge in the activity of all those beneficial microbes.
So almost doubling it makes a massive difference across the board. Really hammers home how vital it is.
Okay, the notes gave some great contrasting examples based on how land is used. Let's walk through those. First one was a blueberry field.
Right, blueberry fields often have quite high organic matter. Why? Well, blueberries like acidic soil.
Okay.
And those acidic, often boggy or peaty soils frequently have lots of sphagnum moss or other plant stuff that just hasn't fully broken down. The low pH and the wet conditions really slow down decomposition, so it just builds up.
Interesting. So the soil type itself really drives that accumulation. Okay, next example, a vineyard.
Vineyards typically have more stable levels. Grapevines live a long time. They're perennials, right? And you generally don't dig up the soil as much or as intensively as, say, an annual vegetable field. So the organic matter that's there tends to stay there. It might not get as high as those acidic soils, but it's stable.
That makes sense. Less disturbance means less breakdown. Okay, than the vegetable field. That sounds like a different story. Yeah, quite different. Vegetable fields often show lower organic matter levels, and the main reason is usually the frequent intensive cultivation.
All the plowing and tilling.
Exactly. Using heavy machinery, digging things up regularly, especially when harvesting root crops like carrots or potatoes. It just churns up the soil a lot, introduces a lot of air.
And more air means faster decomposition.
You got it. Gives those microbes more oxygen, they work faster, burn through the organic matter more quickly. Vegetable fields also tend to have more bacteria, which love those disturbed, aerated conditions. It's harder to build up that stable, long-lasting humus.
So it's kind of a constant challenge in that system. Are there ways to manage that, or is it just how it is with intensive veg growing?
It's definitely a balancing act. You need loose soil for many veg, but you also want that organic matter. Rotations help, cover crops help. We'll get to that.
Okay, one more example. The pasture or hayfield seem different again.
Absolutely. Pastures, hayfields, places where you don't plow, they tend to build up a lot of organic matter, especially deeper down.
Why is that?
Grasses have these really dense, fibrous root systems, and those roots are constantly growing, dying off, regrowing. That's a steady, significant input of organic material right into the soil.
From the roots themselves.
Yeah. And if you mow less often or leave the clippings, that adds even more on top. It's like this natural, slow composting process happening all the time. Undisturbed soil.
A kind of self-fertilizing system.
Pretty much. And that stable, undisturbed structure also tends to favor fungi more than bacteria. And fungi are really good at creating those more complex, stable forms of carbon that last longer in the soil.
So these examples really paint a picture, don't they? How we manage the land directly controls the organic matter. Cultivation intensity seems like the main lever.
That's a really critical point. The more you disturb the soil, plowing early, harrowing often, heavy machines, the more air gets in, the faster decomposition happens. You can lose carbon, lose nutrients, which is why things like crop rotation after that initial work are so important. You need follow-up practices to try and rebuild or at least maintain that structure and organic matter over the next few years.
It's interesting, though. The notes did add a bit of nuance. That some aeration isn't always bad, right? Some crops actually need it.
That's a crucial clarification, yeah. We often focus on, oh no, carbon loss. But for certain crops, a bit of aeration is necessary. Think about those carrots and potatoes again.
Yeah.
They need soil that's loose enough for the roots or tubers to expand easily. Well-drained, yes. Holding water, yes. But also needing oxygen around the roots. So sometimes controlled cultivation is needed to get that right balance of air, water, and soil firmness.
So it's not automatically tillage is bad. It's about the right amount for the right crop at the right time.
Exactly. Finding the sweet spot for what you're growing.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's switch gears slightly. We know what affects it. What can people actually do to increase organic matter? What are the strategies?
Well, a really big one, especially if you're aiming for, healthier land without relying on pesticides and things, is using cover crops.
Cover crops. We hear that term a lot.
Yeah.
What exactly are they doing for the organic matter?
Several key things. First, they just cover the soil, right? So they protect it from being washed away by rain or blown away by wind erosion control.
Okay, that's important.
Second, their roots help improve that soil structure we keep talking about. They create channels, add organic material as they grow. And then, crucially, when the cover crop finishes its cycle, or you terminate it, it decomposes right there, adding a fresh batch of organic material directly into the soil. It's like growing your own fertilizer or green manure.
Actively feeding the soil right there in place.
Exactly. And a bonus.
Yeah.
Certain types, especially legumes, think clover, vetch, peas,
Yeah.
they can actually pull nitrogen gas right out of the air and fix it into the soil, making it available for the next crop you plant.
Whoa, free nitrogen.
Pretty much. So you're boosting fertility and organic matter at the same time, potentially reducing your need for outside compost or fertilizer. It's a really powerful tool.
Are there any, downsides or things to watch out for with cover crops? Competition with the main crop, maybe?
Yeah, you have to manage them right. Timing of planting and termination is important so they don't interfere or use up too much water in dry areas. But the benefits usually outweigh the challenges if managed well.
Good point. Okay, something else the notes mentioned was this. Carbon to nitrogen ratio. CN ratio. Sounds a bit technical. Can you break that down?
Yeah, it does sound technical, but the idea is pretty simple. Think back to those microbes eating the organic matter.
Okay, the soil bugs.
They need food, right? They primarily eat carbon for energy. Think of it as their carbs. And they need nitrogen to build their bodies like their protein.
Carbon for energy, nitrogen for building blocks. Got it.
The CN ratio just tells you how much carbon food there is compared to nitrogen food in whatever organic stuff you're adding. And that ratio affects how fast it breaks down and, importantly, whether it releases nitrogen or actually ties it up for a while.
Okay, that makes sense. So give us some examples. What's a typical CN ratio?
Well, something like finished compost or just general soil organic matter is often around 10.1 or maybe 15.1. 10 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen. That's a pretty balanced diet for the microbes.
So they break it down easily.
Yeah, relatively quickly. And as they do, they release excess nitrogen that plants can use pretty readily. Now compare that to something like wheat straw. Straw can be like 80.1 or even 100.1, way more carbon than nitrogen.
So what happens then?
The microbes see all that carbon energy and they go nuts trying to break it down. But to build their own bodies to do that work, they need nitrogen, since there's not much nitrogen in the straw itself.
They grab it from the soil.
Exactly. They temporarily borrow or immobilize the nitrogen that's already in the soil, making it unavailable to your plants for a short time.
Ah, so adding a bunch of straw could actually starve your plants of nitrogen, at least initially. That's really important to know.
It is. It's not permanent eventually. As some microbes die, that nitrogen gets released again, but it can cause a temporary deficiency.
And the notes mention things like oak leaves or pine needles are even higher.
Oh, yeah. Oak leaves might be 200.1, pine needles maybe 300.1 or even more. Very high carbon.
So they break down really slowly.
Very slowly. And they will definitely tie up nitrogen for quite a while as they decompose. They're great for long-term soil building, adding stable carbon, but you wouldn't rely on them for immediate nutrient release. Might even need to add some nitrogen with them if your plants are actively growing.
So understanding the CN ratio of what you're adding is key to managing nutrients. High CN stuff is a long-term investment in structure. Low CN is more of an immediate nutrient boost.
That's a great way to summarize it. It's about balancing the short-term needs of your plants with the long-term health of your soil.
Okay, great. We've covered a lot about what it is, how it changes, how to increase it. Let's really nail down the impacts. What does organic matter do to the soil's physical properties? Structure, specifically.
Right. This is where it's such a powerhouse. We mentioned aggregates those clumps. Organic matter is the glue. It binds sand, silt, and clay particles together into these stable clumps.
It's glue.
And having these aggregates is what creates good soil structure. It increases porosity, all those little air and water pockets we talked about.
Which makes it easier for roots, water, air.
Exactly. It directly improves how easily air and water move through the soil. And we already said this sponge-like structure holds more water overall.
Right.
Plus, soil with good structure resists being compacted, say, by foot traffic or machinery, and it's much less prone to washing away in heavy rain erosion. It builds a stronger, more resilient soil.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Like building a house with good bricks versus just sand. Okay, what about chemically? How does organic matter affect the soil chemistry?
Chemically, it's also super important. Organic matter has like sticky surfaces at a microscopic level. It can hold on to plant nutrients.
Hold on to them. How?
It prevents them from just being washed or leached out of the soil when it rains. It keeps them in the root zone, and it holds them in a way that they can be released slowly as plants need them. It's not locked away forever, but it's not lost easily either.
So it's like a nutrient bank account for the plants.
That's a good analogy. And related to that is something called cation exchange capacity, or CEC.
CEC. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, basically, soil particles, especially clay and organic matter, have negative electrical charges. Plant nutrients like calcium, magnesium, potassium, they often have positive charges. Opposites attract, right? So the organic matter holds on to these positively charged nutrients, keeping them available instead of letting them wash away. More organic matter generally means a higher CEC, which means the soil can hold more nutrients. It boosts fertility.
Okay, so it's physically holding water and chemically holding nutrients. That's powerful. Lastly, the biological side. We touched on it, but let's elaborate on the impact there.
Right. We said it's food for the microbes, but it's more than just food. Increasing organic matter improves the whole habitat for the microbes. Better structure, more stable moisture, more food. It just makes a bit of a home.
So you get more microbes and more different types of microbes.
Exactly. More abundance and more diversity. And whether it's compost you add or plant residues you leave or manure, that's the fuel driving the whole soil food web.
And these microbes aren't just hanging out, they're working, right?
Absolutely essential work. They are the recyclers. They take complex organic stuff that plants can't use directly, and they decompose it, breaking it down into simple, inorganic forms that plant roots can absorb.
Like unlocking the nutrients.
Precisely. They unlock phosphorus, potassium, nitrogen, sulfur, micronutrients, making them available. It's this constant, intricate dance of decomposition and nutrient release that fuels everything. It truly makes the soil a living, breathing ecosystem. It's really pretty incredible when you stop and think about it. It really is a whole hidden world.
Okay, well, that feels like a good place to wrap up our deep dive into organic matter. Let's just quickly hit the main takeaways again.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is organic matter really is the lifeblood of healthy soil. It's not just one thing. It affects everything. Water holding, nutrient supply, the physical structure, resistance to pests, disease. It's all interconnected.
And hopefully understanding these connections gives you a practical way, a shortcut even, to appreciate just how complex and vital healthy soil really is without needing a PhD in soil science.
Exactly. It empowers you to look at soil differently.
So for our final thought today, I want you, the listener, to just think about the ground right around you. Maybe it's your garden, maybe it's the local park, maybe it's just, a crack in the pavement with a weed growing out of it. How might these ideas about organic matter be playing out right there, even on a tiny scale? What small things, maybe even just leaving the leaves where they fall, could help build a slightly healthier soil ecosystem in that little patch?
Yeah, notice what's happening.
Take a closer look, observe, maybe explore a bit more. It's a fascinating world down there, right beneath our feet. We all know healthy plants need healthy soil, right? It sounds simple enough.
It does.
But what is it about healthy soil that really makes the difference?
Yeah.